right, come along with me as we go out and plant our fall tomatoes. I'm actually about 2 weeks ahead. I've been out of town for 10 days and my husband was in charge of taking care of these, and they've been a little bit stressed because yes, he knows how to water, but he doesn't know how to monitor them when he's hardening them off and making sure that they're not getting stressed. It's okay, we won't blame it on him. Just bad timing on my part for going out of town. And then I'm going out of town again this weekend for 4 days. He's going with me. We have a house sitter, but she doesn't take care of my garden or my plants. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these into the garden so that I can put them on a timer and they will at least get watered while I am gone. It is a little hot to be doing this, but my garden has plenty of afternoon shade, so I'm really not worried about it. I've been hardening them off for about 2 or 3 weeks, and so they should be fine. So let's get these tomatoes into the ground. But first, let's rewind to a few days ago when I started prepping. I don't know if you can tell from this video, but this is where I'm planting the tomatoes, and you'll see right here there's a line, and that is where the shade has already reached for the day. So as the sun continues to go over, this area will be completely shaded. It's lunchtime, like I said, so by like 2-3 o'clock when it's insanely hot out here, that should all be shaded, so they should be fine. So when I started these 8-ish weeks ago, 6-8 weeks ago, I made myself insanely organized because of these new containers from Bootstrap Farmer. So all the varieties are in the same color container. So like Saucy Lady is all in the purple container, so that if there was an issue where they fell over, etc., and they lost their tagging, then I knew which ones were Saucy Ladies because they're in purple containers. I already went through earlier today and dug these holes. I did it super early this morning when it was still nice and cool outside. Typically my rows have 9 plants per row, but because I've already made most of our tomato products for this year, I decided to only do 6 per row. And each of those Bootstrap Farmer, the little cell trays that we start the seeds in, are just 6 per seed cell. So that way I have 6 per row, and it just worked out like that. The next variety are going to be Marglobes. So I've already made most of our tomato stuff for this season, so I didn't need a ton of tomatoes, so I did go with these smaller Marglobes. I'm mainly growing tomatoes to make a few more batches of spaghetti sauce. I've made all the ketchup that we need. We probably could use a couple more things of diced tomatoes, but not a ton. And then I want to make barbecue sauce, and I use a ton of tomato soup when I'm cooking, like the Campbell's, like the canned tomato soup. So I want to make a couple batches of homemade tomato soup so that I don't have to use the Campbell's. And then this Homestead is a variety that I grew in the spring, but I'm wondering if it's a variety that will do better in the fall. This one is super wilty. It obviously is not getting enough water, so hopefully it will revive once I get it planted. They just were super spindly and just didn't produce as many tomatoes as I thought that they should. So I'm going to try them in the fall and see if they're more of a variety that'll do better in the fall. I'm just kind of playing around with tomatoes this year because, like I said, I've already basically made all of our tomato things that we need for the year. Let me go to the porch and grab, there's only 4 more plants, but grab 4 more plants and then I'll be right back. So the last variety is going to be the Halcinator, and this is my first time trying to grow them. They did get a little bit leggy compared to the other varieties while I was gone. I also used a different potting soil because I ran out of potting soil when I up-potted, so I did use seed starting mix when I up-potted them, so that could have something to do with it as well. I dug this row for 6 plants, and I only have 4 of the Halcinators. I don't know if maybe I started enough and they didn't sprout. I don't know. Anyway, so we only ended up with 4 Halcinators, so this row is going to be too short, but it's okay. I'll just fill in the holes. Let me go get some granular fertilizer before I start putting these in the hole. So if you've been following me for a while, then you know that I'm not a huge granular fertilizer user. I amend my soil between each season. I put hay and different types of mulch that we have around, like pine needles and oak leaves, to regenerate the soil between plantings. And then I use liquid fish emulsion while the plants are growing, and then I have a Jack's Classic that I'll use here and there. It's not organic, so I don't use it very often, but I do still like it, and so I do still use it, especially when the plants are young like this. But a time that I do use granular fertilizer is when I'm planting something into a hole into the ground. So granular fertilizers are not readily available to our plants. They have to be mixed into the soil, they have to have water, and they start breaking down. So then they're readily available to the plants within a few weeks. So I like putting it into the hole because then it's down into the ground, and as it starts breaking down, then of course the roots are down there with it and it's beneficial for the plant. But to just go along and sprinkle it on the top of the soil, that's not something that I do. But if you are a big granular fertilizer fan, I posted about this a few weeks ago. This bag was originally $26.99. I bought it for $13.99, which is 50% off at Tractor Supply. I bought this bag, 2 weeks later went back, and there were still a ton of them left, so I bought everything that they had left. This bag of fertilizer will last me the 2 growing seasons, the fall and the spring growing season. But granular fertilizer, as long as this bag doesn't have any holes in it and you store it in a nice dry place, granular fertilizer lasts forever. And if it gets chunky, you just break the chunks up and use the chunks. So I'm going to throw a handful, no exact measurement to this, into each hole as I plant these tomatoes in. I used a post hole digger to dig the holes. It is much easier to me than sitting there with a trowel and digging each individual hole, but I am going to use a trowel to fill in these holes. So let me get this bag open because it is not a zip top like the previous ones. I've never used this Dr. Earth brand. I usually buy the, I don't even know what the brand is. It's not Osmocote. But anyway, it's another organic fertilizer. So this is going to be my first time using the Dr. Earth. There can't be much difference. Most of this stuff is chicken waste anyway. So, and bone meal. So let's get this cut open and get these tomatoes planted. So everybody has different methods for planting tomatoes, what they throw in the holes. I've heard all the things, eggs, Tums, etc. This is the way that I found that works best for me. So, you know, you just kind of play around and decide what works best for you. I do bury these like a couple inches deeper than what they are in this pot, but I do not bury them super deep. And I don't do the whole method where you like bend the stalk of your tomato. These are actually pretty rigid stalks, and I feel like if I like put them down, bent them up, I risk breaking my stalk. The reason that a lot of people do this is they say that it grows the roots across the stem, which is true. Any of this stem that is covered in dirt will grow roots, and then it strengthens it because it has to go up. I just don't think that that's probably necessary. So I'm going to cut off the bottom couple of limbs so that I can cover this with as much dirt as possible. And I will kind of like mound it up like a hill around it. I just feel like if wind were to come along before this is tall enough for me to string, because I do the Florida weave, then I feel like that hill kind of keeps it. I forgot to put fertilizer in that hole. Oh well, we'll do it for the next one. I feel like that hill kind of keeps it from being able to be like super moved by the wind. I don't know if that's like a method or just something that I came up with in my head. Because ADHD makes me do weird things, but seems to work for me. Not gonna forget to put the fertilizer in the hole this time. And then sometimes I'll kind of break the roots up, but I don't really necessarily think that that's something you have to do either. So there's that one. These didn't get super root bound because I started them here at the house, so there's not like a ton of roots. A lot of times if you, and I think that's where the breaking up of the roots comes from, if you buy plants already started from the store, a lot of times they're super root bound, especially because you don't know how long they've been in that container and then sat at the store before you bought them. Like I said, I am doing this about 2 weeks too early, but these plants are outgrowing their containers, and then they would be root bound if I left them. And then, like I said, we're going out of town again for just a couple days this time. And I just don't want my farm sitter to have to worry about taking care of my plants. She absolutely would if I asked her, but we have so many animals. I think that's enough for her to take care of, something that she doesn't do on a daily basis. I am taking my tabs. I did not make the big paint stirs this season, but I need to go back and make them for each of these varieties. So I'm just taking my little tabs and putting them onto the end of the row. All of these varieties had days to maturity of like, I think they were like 60 or like 80 days to maturity, most of them. I did that whole video when I started these from seed, and I'll post it in the comments so that if you did not watch that, you can go back and watch where I talked about which seeds I chose and why. Now I am in North Florida, so South Florida, it's not time to plant tomatoes probably yet, but because I absolutely think that it is brutal down there. Several of my friends posted that it was over 100 degrees at their house. So while we are close to 100 here, we have not made it to 100 yet. And the reason that tomato plants don't do well in the heat is that it sterilizes the pollen from the blooms, and so they can't get pollinated. And I think it's over 90 degrees that sterilization happens of the pollen. So anything over 90 degrees, your tomatoes aren't going to produce. Now, am I planting these into the ground while it's still 90 degrees? Yes, but they should have a few more weeks of putting on growth before they start putting on blooms. And hopefully, we live in Florida, but hopefully by middle August, when they're starting to set fruit, we'll be in lower temperatures. Is that wishful thinking? Like I said, I had planned to plant these out like August 1st, so I'm not super far ahead. And they could definitely stay a little bit longer if I was here to monitor. Oh no, I ripped the top out of that plant. Oh well, that just means it'll put on more side shoots. Anyway, I just won't be here for the next few days to monitor them and make sure that they're not getting too much sunlight or not enough water. So I just feel it's in the best interest to go ahead and plant these out. And I can put this one water hose on a timer so that they get watered early in the morning and have enough moisture in the ground to keep them cool before the heat of the day. I bet if I put, this will be easier. If I go through and put all the fertilizer in each of the holes, then come back and put the plant in, this would go a lot faster. Maybe, maybe not. This poor one may not make a comeback. It is super wilty. It's really dry too though, so we'll get some water to it. I'm going to deep water today for a few hours so that the ground's nice and saturated. There is some moisture. I mean, the top like 6 inches of this ground is dry. But once I dig it down about 6 inches, it is pretty moist down there. So we just got to get that top 6 inches rehydrated. The heat is brutal out here. And so whenever you water and you don't deep water and you're just watering those first couple inches, it can evaporate with this heat off those first few inches. So when you're deep watering for a couple hours that first time, you're making sure that you're getting deep down into the earth And then every time after you water, you won't have to water for quite as long because you've already super saturated the ground. So then you're just re-wetting those top layers that the sun has dried out. My husband said some of these were putting on blooms. I've yet to see a bloom. So maybe he decided to pick them off. I'm going to have to ask questions. Or maybe they fell off. Okay. So because of the way that my husband's grandparents built this property and where I chose to grow my garden, this isn't where he grew his garden. He grew watermelons here, but he grew a garden on the other side of the property, which kind of has the same system going. I didn't get to meet him, so of course I can't pick his brain, and my husband doesn't know because he wasn't in gardening. So I think the way that they built this land is they were into permaculture, just the way that the fruit trees were laid out when we first inherited it, the way that their gardens were around where their trailer sat. He grew watermelons down here in this dip, and the leaves from these oak trees fall into the soil, and so it helps to regenerate the soil. And then the runoff from, okay, I thought my goats were out, but it's my brother-in-law's goat. He has a goat that looks just like mine. That is crazy. But my Billy is back here. Anyway, and so the runoff from this pasture behind me and this one beside me come right down in here and wash out that way. So far, it hasn't created a huge washout problem in the garden. But all of that helps to regenerate the soil because the wash off from the pasture contains cow and horse waste. So the soil always has this nice, dark, rich color. Otherwise, I think it would be very sandy. Like as you go around other parts of the property, it's very sandy. These got so leggy. Anyway, I'll fill in these holes so they don't take on water. I was trying to wear long pants and a denim shirt out here, but it's too hot for all that. All right, let's get our water hoses in. I got to put this tag back before I forget. Let's get our water hoses laid down and get some water on these. People often ask what in the world the bricks are for at the ends of each of my rows, and there's nothing scientific to it, and they don't do anything crazy other than hold my water hoses down while I stretch them. And these aren't water hoses, these are soaker hoses, but you get the idea. Oh, I'm afraid to put it down. It's going to smash the plants. Like I said, it just provides a weight so that I can stretch that as much as possible. This soaker hose is going to be too long, but as we plant more stuff for the fall garden, I'll of course use it, and so I'm not going to unhook it. I'll just leave it coiled up at the end and let it soak that in. Okay, so I've got the soaker hose running, and the next thing I'm going to do is provide a little bit of mulch. This will help keep the area around the tomatoes cooler because of the mulch, and it'll help keep that moisture from evaporating. I do go in and kind of put it on top of the soaker hose that's next to the tomato plant. I use cedar shavings. Cedar just has some natural oils in it that help deter pests. You can use pine as well. You can use your straw. I don't like straw because no matter what kind I get and how seedless they say it is, it always has seeds, and then I have a grass problem. I use hay from our hay barn in my raised beds, and I would use hay out here too if I had enough, but I don't think that I have enough to cover this entire area. I've just found that the cedar shavings work really well. Another thing that it helps do is it helps when the rain comes and splashes the water. It keeps that water and that dirt from splashing up on your plants. That is one way that you get a ton of disease on your plants, is from dirt splashing up on them. And so I find that the cedar shavings help when the plants are this size and it rains, to keep a lot of that dirt and moisture from splashing up on the plants, and helps decrease the risk for disease. So I'm just going to go through and sprinkle this around each plant. Like I said, this is the bag that I used in the spring when I started tomatoes. So one bag is going to get me through 2 seasons. Maybe. Actually, I may have used one bag and had to go back and get another in the spring. So maybe 2 bags will last me 2 seasons. This also, as it breaks down, helps to, of course, feed the soil over time. There are people who are heavy on wood mulch, and I'm not. Wood mulch tends to drain a lot of nitrogen out of the soil as it breaks down. So I'm not a big fan of wood mulch, but this that just sits on the top and isn't very large and isn't a huge amount, I don't mind. But would I go cover my entire garden in wood mulch? Absolutely not. I'm going to have to go get a 3rd bag. I think I lied. Well, pooey. It's going to be 3 bags for 2 seasons. But anyway, I don't need a ton, so I might end up mulching those with something else. But for now, we are done. Our tomatoes are planted, and I'll be back in a few weeks when it's not so hot and we start the rest of our fall garden.